Morning folks, local hills today. It's a bit breezy, I hope you can hear me. It's pretty windy today folks, I'm not sure how much you'll be able to hear me, so I'll keep the chat to the minimum as I'm hiking along here. But basically my route is, well, part of it is unfolding in front of us there. I'm following this track which will lead me more or less to the high ground, and then I have to find a route through the heather. I'm going into the hill that's behind that ridge in front of you. And then I'm going to backtrack a little bit. I'll cut the corner actually, I'll pick a diagonal route across, and then I'm heading away across. So I'm going up in behind there, then I'm going to cut the corner, I'm going to go away around there. I drop down into a wee glen that I know. We'll see how the timings are, but I've got a flask of tea with me, so I'll have a tea and a biscuit. I think I've got a banana as well. So we're travelling light today. I'll get down into that glen in the shelter, have a wee bite to eat and a cup of tea, and then I have a big climb up and over this ground that you can see over there, and then I'll traverse round past these sheep where the trees have been recently planted, into that wee barn there, that tin barn. I'll come in at the back of that and then back onto this track here. So it's more or less a circular route. It's a good stretch of the legs, but it's relatively easy terrain. I'm actually just hiking in my trainers today. I got a wee junction off pass here folks, but I want to go up this way, traverse across this moor, and then the final ascent to the highest point in this range of hills actually, called Lammermuir. Highest point is away across in that direction, but I can use this track to get up a bit and a wee traverse across, and then it's an easy hike up over the final summit. That's a grouse, didn't quite catch it on camera. I'm going to go, after I've crossed the summit, I'm going to come back on myself a little bit and cross that ridge there. I'm going to drop down in behind it. But for now, I'm going directly up into the wind. I don't need a compass today to tell me that I'm walking west-northwest just now. Straight into the wind. A pretty biting wind it is too. There we are folks, almost there. Well folks, that's the summit in behind me. I've just crossed this stretch of heather. There's a track coming up which I'm trying to locate, and then I'm going to spin that round to a junction of tracks actually, and then I'm going to head off downhill. So let's march on. Quite springy this heather. So this is the main track that crosses these hills folks. I'm not going to be on it for very long, I'm just using it for quick access today. I'm going to drop down to the low point, I'm going to seek out another track heading down into the glen. I don't know if that's a couple of ravens ahead there or just a couple of crows. One of my conservation sites in the Himalaya when I was out there working had quite a big population of the Himalayan choughs that flew around the summit of the little peak that I used to camp underneath to do my monitoring work, vegetation monitoring. And I loved listening to the call of the choughs in the morning, seeking out the thermals, rising up, ready for a day's hunting I guess. Me started my descent down into the glen folks. Let me spin the camera around and see if I can show you a view. I'm actually tucked down in behind the rushes here, so the rushes are almost head high. I can't really see over them. Let me see if I can find a gap for you. About here. That's where we're heading down into there. It's a lovely calm day down here folks. We're out of that wind that was keeping us company over the tops this morning. beginning to get a little bit peckish. Need a cup of tea. I think I'll finish the descent. I'll get down into the bottom of the glen here, and then I've got a kilometre or two, maybe not as much as that actually. I've got to wind my way through the glen anyway for a wee bit, and I'm looking for a track then that'll take me past some trees skirting a loch. And once I get onto that track, I'll seek out a place to stop. I'm not sure if I'll get all the way to the wee glen that I usually camp in. Perhaps. See if my belly's rumbling before then. Isn't that gorgeous up in there? Now folks, I'm more or less at the bottom of the glen, so I need to start searching out a wee track, actually just traces of a track that will skirt the trees that circle the loch. The wee track has a rising traverse across the hillside in front of me here. Let me show you that. Spin you all the way around. The sun in my eyes now. You see a couple of pine trees on that hill over there. Well, I want to traverse the corner of that and then drop down into that glen. The one that the opposing flank there is covered in the birch trees. So I want to drop down in there, have a spot of lunch, and then I'm going to explore that glen for a wee while and then climb up and out of it and back into the wind again. Drop down onto the other side where my car is parked. So we've got a bit of work to do yet. Now we're approaching the burn again. So I've got to hop and a skip to get across this burn, and then the track is just in here. And to get across without getting my feet wet. Can we manage a jump here? To jump across that burn 3 times. The track winds its way over it backwards and forwards. So I found this wee track that I was mentioning that leads round to the secluded glen where we're going to stop for a cup of tea. I'm in need of a cup of tea. These lone pines growing out of the heather look bonny. A little bit of russet brown from the bracken. And on the slope across there underneath that glorious blue sky, that's birchwood. Some old birch trees there. Let's march on. skirting along the top of the loch now. Well, actually, I'm calling it a loch. It's actually a reservoir. It's the Hope Reservoir. I don't know the history of it. I don't know if it was a wee loch or loch-in at some point. It looks from the topography as if it could have been, but it's dammed at the far end now. Watching some birds flitting around in the trees. There's a hawthorn there. I'm guessing they've been having a wee taste at the berries. We're getting back to the wind, folks. We're skirting a little plantation here. The Scots pine, the glaucous blue one, and the larch, which is pretty obvious at this time of the year, and then the darker green on the pine tree up here is a wee bit away yet, but I'm pretty sure it'll be lodgepole. So yes indeed, that's lodgepole pine there. I'm going to drop down into the bottom of this wee glen here, see if I can tuck myself down someplace, get a wee bit of shelter from the wind, have a wee bit of lunch. So this is a different burn I've got to cross, folks. This is another feeder burn for the reservoir. Looking a wee bit wider. To push up through the vegetation, see if we can get a place to jump across. There we go. Tucked down in here for a cup of tea. Well folks, hope you're enjoying this wee walk. It's a good opportunity to check in. In fact, I should have been away today. I've been talking to you on and off over the last few months about a canoe journey that I'm planning. Well, today was the day. I should have been heading up the road before the crack of dawn this morning. And although it's a bit breezy today, actually it would have been okay today for the canoe. But it's a multi-day journey that I'm planning, and tomorrow over much of Scotland we're going to have winds gusting up to 50 miles an hour, and actually over the far north they're going to reach 70 mile an hour gusts, blowing fairly consistently at about 25 miles an hour, and that really quite simply isn't canoe weather. If it had just been for a few hours tomorrow I might have considered it and then just hunkered down for a wee while, but in fact the wind is going to keep blowing pretty much all day tomorrow, tomorrow night and through Sunday as well. Not waning until probably the wee small hours of Monday morning, so absolutely not canoe journey weather. But I was up early this morning, so chucked a couple of things in the rucksack and grabbed a camera out for a wee walk. The GoPro is almost out of power now, so I'm going to have another cup of tea here. I'll switch off for a wee while and I'll film the last wee bit of the walk. I'm going to explore up through this glen and I'm going to climb up and over and drop down back onto the other side, onto the north side of these hills, back into the wind and back to the car. So hopefully I'll get another 2 or 3 minutes of filming for you before the GoPro runs out of power. So let me finish this cup of tea first though. So I'm going to go, let me see, roughly 2/3 of the way up this glen, and then I'm going to climb the flank that we see on the right. I want to go up and over that. Actually, I want to go up onto that ridge that we see on the right there, and then I want to follow it until it just begins to rise, and then I'll head off on a downward traverse which will take me back towards that wee barn that I think was in camera shot this morning when I was hiking the earlier part of the track, and then from there I can spin back round and pick up the track that I originally started on. That's what I was looking for, folks. I knew there was traces of a track going up onto this high ground. It's easy enough pushing through the heather, but I'm just hiking in trainers today, so I wanted to try and find this wee track if I could that zigzags its way up here. I'm not sure what it's made by, probably just sheep. But it does zigzag up to the high ground, so it serves me well. It served my purpose today anyway. Keep the heather seeds out of my socks. It's a steep pull up here. Just going to push through the heather here to get to this fence line, which I can follow for a wee bit. Up across there and then away in behind there early this morning. Heading in this direction now. going to veer off the way across here because there's a bog ahead, and like I say, I've got my trainers on. They're Gore-Tex trainers. I've got dry feet. I'm going to try and keep it that way. So that barn has just come into sight, and you see it there, just in there someplace. Hold you up a bit, you'll see it over the top. The track is just a few metres beyond that. Keeping to this slightly higher piece of ground, it's pretty boggy over there. See if I can find a way through without getting my feet wet. There's a wee spur track leads up to that barn from the track that I'm heading for. So there you are, you can see the barn in there, and then the main track dead ahead. Once we're on that track, 10-15 minutes back to the car. That's the car back down next to that field of sheep. Just to the right of the larch tree plantation. 5 minutes. I've got you tucked in the car there, folks, out of the wind. I don't know if I judged that perfectly or if it was just luck, but the GoPro's down to 3%. So that was a wee stretch of the legs this morning. It's about 1 o'clock now, so hope you enjoyed that wee hike together. And I do hope that I get back to you soon with another wee adventure. So stay safe, folks, and thanks as always for tuning in. Bye for now.